All right, thank you everybody for joining us today for our monthly CISMA call. It's already August. I can't feel both like it was just 2020 and like it's been 2020 for an eternity. So great to have you all on the call today. We always have a number of folks hop on in these first few minutes as well, but we'll go ahead and get started. So just really quickly, our agenda today, I'm really excited about our featured presentation, this regional Cogongrass coordination. I've been kind of keeping up with it through the Six Rivers CISMA and seeing some updates, but I'm excited to hear more, kind of a more comprehensive overview of what they're doing, because it's really cool, and I think you know, kind of benefits us all to understand this model and hear about what they're doing. And then I've just got some updates for you guys, some different things going on. And if anyone else has anything they'd like to share in the updates, please definitely chime in. You can always type an update in the chat box or jump on. You know, we want to make sure if you have anything to share that we give you that opportunity as well. So with that, we're going to jump right into our feature presentation for the day. And I think, okay, it looks like he got unmuted. I accidentally muted Ed. So Ed O'Daniels with the Longleaf Alliance is with us this afternoon to talk about this partnership approach for Cogongrass control, where they're working across land boundaries in the Panhandle. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ed.
Thank you. Thank you. Can everybody hear me all right?
I think so.
Okay, good. Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you for the introduction. I'm Ed O'Daniels. I am the Cogongrass coordinator with the Longleaf Alliance. I've been in this position for about a year, loving it, really learning a lot and meeting a lot of people and seeing a lot of good places. And this is the basics of what it takes to go after Cogongrass on a landscape scale, the partnership approach. Oops. Okay, sorry we missed a couple of them there. Let's see if I can get back. Okay, Cogongrass, Imperata, cylindrica. As many of you know, it's here. It's very prevalent. It's been here since the early 1900s. Brought in purposely. It's been brought in accidentally, purposely for cattle grazing, horse grazing a little bit, and it was also brought in accidentally through various means. It was used as a packing material, and it got out. As a lot of us knows, it's everywhere, not just here in Florida, but Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, Louisiana, and then some. It's becoming a big problem. And as we all know, it spreads fast. It moves through various methods, mowing, moving dirt around, tilling it, all that kind of stuff. It's drought tolerant. The roots, the rhizomes go down deep. They suck out all the nutrients and moistures available in the soil. It's a warm season grass. It doesn't like the cold. Luckily, it falls back after the first frost. Makes it even that much easier to spot from driving down the road. And it's a bad grass. It's got tons of negative impacts on the ecosystem. Like I said, it takes up nutrients. It displaces other plants. It can shade out plants that need sun to sprout properly, and inevitably it will be, and it is expensive to manage. A lot of people don't have the opportunity to catch it in a small patch, and it turns into a great big huge patch very rapidly, and then that's when it becomes noticed as being a problem. And unfortunately, to put it down can be extremely expensive. It's invading our natural areas. It's getting into the areas that we manage for various habitats, whether it be for you know, red-cockaded woodpeckers or seepage bogs or anything like that. It wants to get down into all those kind of areas. It has about the only boundary that I've noticed is that it doesn't really go into the water. If it's inundated too long with underwater, it doesn't do very well. Other than that, anywhere is fair game for Cogongrass. Right now, we're in the epicenter of where it's bad, where it's the worst. Right here in Alabama, Florida, Panhandle. It is bad down in Central Florida as well. Don't get that wrong by no means. And it's beginning to spread out further. I've heard of reports even further out than these marked on this map, which is a little bit outdated. We're working on getting a new updated version of it. And like I said, it can go just about anywhere. It can spread all the way up in the New England states. It can spread almost to Alaska. The biggest stop at that point is cold. If it's really, really cold for a long period of time, that can put a hinder on its growth. But everywhere else it can go, including, you know, Caribbean islands, Hawaii, all those kind of good places. It has no problem getting there and taking good root. So how do we go about solving this problem? Well, first off, it's not on one single property. It's not one single person's responsibility. It's not their one person's fault. It's almost everybody's main priority, or they have some kind of something invested in it that it's going to take a teamwork approach to get rid of this noxious invasive species. It's really going to take everybody across the board, all land managers, property owners, all that kind of stuff. If you don't have it, to keep an eye out for it and you know, work together on getting rid of it. This costs money. It's not free by any means whatsoever. And you know, in some places more funding is going to be brought up. It's going to be needed to put this out. Different grants for different property owners, land managers, whatnot. The Florida Forest Service, they even have to work into their budget how much they spend on Cogongrass control, invasive species control, but in particular, like I said, on Cogongrass. They are working on other invasive species. And as we go along this fight, you know, there's more science that's going to be rolling out. Things will get easier, hopefully, thanks to science. A lot of people are really working to find better controls, more efficient controls, even biological controls, which sounds fantastic to me. Something that you can let go and it do its thing. But that's part of the science of it. It's going to progress, definitely progress. Well, the 7 elements of effective Cogongrass control at the landscape scale. Well, we had to determine a geographic area that we're going to be working in first. This was the very first thing that we had to approach as to where are we working this idea. Where are we going to prove this? What's the proving ground for saying that this is a good coordination event that could happen, that we can prove that our ideas are valid and worthy of any kind of funding or support that we could possibly get. Then, of course, those involved decided, well, it's time we need a main person in control, a dedicated full-time coordinator. That is myself, thankfully. And then how do we share our data amongst ourselves? You know, everybody records data. And unfortunately, not everybody records data the same way. And unfortunately, even more, that data isn't always shared the same way. There are a few things that we're working on. I'll get into that later on as far as mapping goes, and being able to share this data of where is Cogongrass, who's dealing with it, and how's it doing kind of scenarios. Like I mentioned, the state of the science is getting better. We're trying to elaborate that more with the different partners and trying to get them educated a little bit more on what they can do, what tools they can use, what equipment, what to watch for, and how to record that kind of stuff. And we're basically trying to train anybody that's working with it with the most advanced that we have, the most up-to-date technologies and information that we have as quickly as we get it. The other thing that we have to work with is an active Cogongrass working group. There's a lot of people involved in this area, and it's not really possible to speak to 500 different people all the time of what's going on. So we've developed a couple different Cogongrass working groups, so that way we can talk to basically the heads of different departments or different entities, and then they filter it down from that point, and it avoids confusion. And then the other thing is a lot of people don't know about Cogongrass or what the effects of it is. How is it bad? So we have to work with public education and outreach. We have to get out there. We have to teach them, educate them a little bit on even though you're not having such a problem with Cogongrass on your property, it could affect your neighbor's property or their neighbor's property, and that can directly affect timber sales or crops or pasture lands or whatever. So it goes back to it's everybody's responsibility. It's going to have to take a team effort to get through this. And then the final big thing is we have to get funding from both local partners, external sources, whichever way we can to make this happen. It's definitely not free by any means whatsoever, and it's not cheap either, unfortunately. Some ways it's more costly than others, but that's the final thing that we are working on is getting the funding, and that's got to be a continuous thing until one of us wins the big lottery and be able to throw in a great big huge amount of money. It's going to be an ongoing effort to make sure we can fund this continuously. There we go. I work, like I said, with the Longleaf Alliance. The local implement team is the GCPEP, the Gulf Coastal Plain Ecosystem Partnership, and it covers areas from Alabama over towards Mobile, all the way to Apalachicola, all the way up into Alabama. And anybody in that area, I tend to work with, and the different work groups that are within those areas, they come together under the GCPEP. It's a great organization I've really been able to learn a lot of things, like I said, and meet a ton of people and see the different ways that people are managing different environments, different landscapes. And even though we're in a tight little area like this, there's a lot of different lands within this area, a ton of different managerial aspects to every piece of this, and it's fantastic to be able to work several together at one time, or a bunch of together at one time, or even one-on-one within this landscape. I've been with GCPEP for 3 years, I believe it is. I've worked with the Wetland Ecosystem Support Team before this position, and we restored ephemeral wetlands and seepage streams. Sorry, and it was great. It was fantastic. I really got to be able to put my hands into the actual work going on, and to be honest, I love to work. I love manual labor. A few of the partners that we work with, obviously Six Rivers, CISMA is a big help to what we do. Always helping out with education and to not just me, but to help putting it out there to others. Alabama Forestry Commission has been a tremendous help. U.S. Forest Service, Covington County Soil and Water Conservation District, they've really led a huge path of what they work with and how they work with landowners and getting them different fundings and grants and all, you know, cost share programs, whatever else that can be done to help get Cogongrass and other invasives dealt with. Here in Florida, Florida Forest Service, instrumental, awesome people. They're really helping out with trying to get this Cogongrass down. Same with Florida Park Service. Northwest Florida Water Management has theirs. DOT has been really on top of their game, really keeping up with my efforts, and we have been going back and forth as to what they're doing, what I'm doing, and how we can collaborate together. And Gulf Power is the primary grant that I work under. The Gulf Power Foundation they've helped me get this started. They've helped pay the way for a lot of my efforts on the Florida side in pertaining to treating private landowners, which is a big thing that I do. If I'm not collaborating, if I'm not coordinating efforts, I'm actively going out and doing what I can to help the private landowners, including spraying their actual infestations in certain scenarios. And it's been great. I would not be able to treat private landowners as of this moment if it was not for Gulf Power. And that the working group that I spoke of, it goes all over the place, not just the 8 that I mentioned before. I could talk for hours of all the different people that are involved and how they're involved, and how much they care and how much they're managing the, you know, for invasives of all sorts, not just Cogongrass. But it goes on and on and on, way more than even this little tree does. As of right now, I have a main geographic area. I need to update this map a little bit, but right now I particularly work within the red bordered area, mostly Geneva County, Covington County, Escambia County up in Alabama, Santa Rosa County, Okaloosa County in Florida. That's a lot of area. I'll help out with anywhere that I can, the best that I can. But our focal area right now, our proving ground, is this area. This area that contains Blackwater State Forest, Conecuh, and Geneva State Forest. So we're working on, you know, proving what I'm doing here, what we are doing. It's not just about me. It's the whole team. Been doing a lot, especially within the past year, obviously, but it goes back way further than that. The idea was even before the August 2016 initial meeting, and as you can see, it's, you know, really picking up on what's going on, working with, like I said, anybody that I can, and doing different meetings, having different workshops, and spreading the word and doing what I can and helping others, not just by me doing work for them or, you know, straight helping them, but helping them to be able to help themselves and help others from that point. The common database that I spoke of earlier, there's some things being in the works right now. Currently open to the public is what they call EDMAPs, early detection and distribution maps. As far as on the professional lines go, like Florida Forest Service and Conecuh National Forest, we needed something that we can cross that line with. We're working on a collector app as of right now. Alabama is heading that up, Alabama Forestry Commission, and they're heading that up and working with National Forest Service to get a good collector app out that we can utilize and have a shared data source. Part of spreading the word, like I mentioned before, the training. What's up to date? What are we doing? What chemicals are best recommended for now, or what new techniques are out there? What is neighbor Joe doing on his place that seems to work? Trying to bring that out there, figure out why it worked, and you know, educate others. And it's not just the public land managers. It's like I said, it's everyone. So we want to be able to include teaching the public, educating them more about what's going on. Why is it important? Like I said, why is it important that even though you don't have it on your property, keeping an eye out on it and making somebody aware or mapping it down. And that, that involves outreach. I have to do door-to-door visits. I go to, these sites. I find a patch of Cogongrass and I'll email or I'll mail a phone call or come up to them and try to work with them and try to help them out. If I personally can't treat their infestation, I do what I can to find a way to get it treated for them, or at the very least, train them, get a little bit, whatever I can to educate them to be able to treat it themselves. And as long as it's getting worked on, that's progress. Cogongrass is expensive. Yes, there's a ton of numbers here. I can go over all of them. But Cogongrass causes problems all across the board. How much trees are lost because the Cogongrass fire burned out a bunch of trees. You can't put cattle in nothing but Cogongrass. So that is, a deficit, and that costs money. And then, of course, getting rid of the Cogongrass costs money. You've got to get it out, and it really adds up across the board. It's expensive. It's an expensive invasive to have. One of the things I'm working on with the various public land manager partners that I have at my disposal, we're working together in areas, teaming up, multiple entities teaming up together and pushing Cogongrass out of these areas. It was a little idea I came up with a while back to be able to perhaps one day put on a map, this area is void of Cogongrass, and expand that on from that point. And hopefully maybe one day have signs on the side of the road saying this area is free of Cogongrass, and it'll give people the want to make sure that it's not spread into those areas, and to be able to have the audacity to stand up and go, we need to check our equipment. We need to wash it down. It was over there. We need to make sure we don't bring it in this area, and then eventually push it out and make those greenless zones bigger and bigger and bigger. To date, I've treated 23.6 acres of actual Cogongrass myself on private lands. I've worked together with other entities that's come in. DOT, I've chased after them. They've treated over 30 miles in my areas. And then other places like Florida Forest Service I've worked with, we've shot down 5.2 acres together worth of Cogongrass. And the private lands that I've been working with, I go across the entire plot, the entire parcel, to make sure I've treated all that I can, and I'm actively coming back trying to push that Cogongrass completely out of there. And that total acres is 1,603 acres. So I'm really making a dent in the area, and that's progress. Unfortunately, it's going to take more money to keep that going, but it's working. It's making it's making a dent in it for sure. And that's the basics of what I'm doing. I know I kind of blew through it a bit quick. I had to pick and choose what details I could really elaborate on, and I owe a ton of thanks to Tim Mearsman with U.S. Forest Service and Craig Iverson with Florida Forest Service. And then Vernon Compton with Longleaf Alliance as to what I'm doing. Without them, I wouldn't be where I'm at, and there wouldn't be so much everybody's running with their heads cut like chickens with their heads cut off. But it really helped to bring it together and bring us to a point where we're working as a unit, a team, and that's what it's going to take to really push Cogongrass out of our area. There are places just outside of our area that is really bad, and we definitely don't want it in our area. We're at a point right now where I don't want to say so much a tipping point, but we're nearing a tipping point that if we don't all together get on this Cogongrass and try to, get it actively managed for, it's really going to get far out of hand. And of course, with that, cost goes way through the roof, loss goes way through the roof, and you lose native areas, natural areas, and there's definitely nothing good about this. And my job is to see that we can work together, try to make it happen. Not just public land managers, private landowners as well. Anybody. I'll even go to a school if I can to help educate them. And this is done through various ways: in meeting, in person, online, phone calls, whatever I can do to get that education across, I will. And if at this point, if anybody's got any questions, I'll do what I can to answer them.
Great, thank you so much, Ed. That was a wonderful presentation. Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, you're welcome to unmute. You can also type it in the chat box to give you a minute to do that. I'll start. Ed, I was wondering if you could just elaborate a little bit on your work with private landowners, just in general, how that has been, kind of how the approach with herbicide, and are you finding landowners, when you're teaching them how to do it, are they willing to take on the responsibility on their own properties?
Yes, actually, that's very good questions. I don't, with the screen the way it is, I don't see anybody in the text box or anything, but just to let that out there. Yeah, I'm having a blast working with private landowners. They're more than willing to let me help them out. If their infestation is an acre or less, I can spray it for free thanks to the Gulf Power Foundation grant that I'm working with. And for the most of them, they're open to herbicide on the property. I'm extremely careful about what herbicides I use and where and what quantity, so that way I don't damage their things. And they love that. They learn what I'm doing. Some of them want to stand around and see what I'm doing. Unfortunately, I don't particularly like it when I'm spraying herbicide all over the place to have a landowner around. But I'll show them. I'll give them a brief demonstration and show them what to do and how they can follow up behind me and tend to it. And for them, like I said, for the most part, they're very active on managing Cogongrass. I've had one that she's had some concerns, and she decided to opt out of the program. Unfortunately, she had 1.25 acres of land, and 1.15 acres of that was Cogongrass. It was horrendous, and I'm going to do what I can. Hopefully, her neighbors that had it even worse, she'll be able to see how they were treated, and she didn't lose trees. They didn't lose trees, which was her primary concern, was losing trees. And then hopefully she'll get back involved. I did get to see the one question on the chat, identifying characteristics. That's a really good point, or questions rather yet. Cogongrass, right now it stands out like a sore thumb, and I know I say that from seeing it all the time, but it's got a lime green kind of color. If it's not managed, it's comparably a lot taller than the surroundings. The blades they're wider blades. Most of them, the areas that haven't been managed, the blades can be up to an inch wide. If you were holding the blade, the margins, the outer edge of the blade feels sharp. It's serrated, and yeah, it can cut. You definitely don't want to walk through this barefooted. The midrib is off-centered and usually considerably lighter color. Another good way to see it that it's Cogongrass is you can pull up a little bit of it, and if you get some rhizomes down there, they'll be usually a whiter color, a creamy color, and they'll have this sharp little spur, which is the next blade that Cogongrass hasn't bladed out yet, basically. And this little spur can be sharp. Another reason why you don't want to go walk through this barefooted is because that spur can puncture skin, and it's definitely a defining characteristic on Cogongrass, and it crawls out from, usually you see round spots, and it'll just go everywhere. It doesn't do real good in shade, but it will creep into shade and be thinner. It won't be nearly as big as you see it in the in full sun. Good question.
Yeah, I think, Ed, when you, like you said, once you get an eye for it, you really can pick it out. Do you think there are any natives that you feel like are really commonly confused with it?
There are a few of them. Um, let's see. What would be good? Johnson grass is one of them. I've had a few people that had a little blue stem. That it's a shorter grass, but in comparison, you would question whether or not it was Cogongrass. I understand why they would say, bring me out and go, this is a patch of Cogongrass. And then upon further review and further educating them on this, no, it's a little blue stem. Um, and I'm sorry, I'm reading the text here. And there are a few other ones. To be honest, I couldn't go through all of them. There's USDA has a good side-by-side comparison sheet. Also, I believe IFAS has a side-by-side comparison sheet that you can access through EDIS. For the life of me, I can't remember what EDIS stands for. But yeah, there's a few different ones out there that look similar to it, but it don't take very long to get an eye for it. And then once you get an eye for it, unfortunately, it's like buying a car that you've never had. As soon as you buy that car, you all of a sudden see it everywhere, and it will stain your eyeball, for lack of better terms. I see it driving 70. I'll be driving 70 miles an hour down the interstate, and I can see it 500 yards off the interstate. It stands out. It's pretty nasty looking. To answer the question I've seen up in the chat, good chemicals to use. Glyphosate seems to be the go-to thing. You're less likely to hurt trees. You are going to kill grasses that are in there, but it's the least intrusive of chemicals. Imazapyr is another product that's used, but you don't want to use it around oak trees. It'll kill them. It basically, when I prescribe any kind of imazapyr, or if I use imazapyr, I'd use it only in a field, like the picture on the right above private lands. That got imazapyr, but the picture in the middle would only get glyphosate. I don't want to hurt those oak trees. I don't care if the landowner wants the oak trees or not. I'm not hurting them. There are some other products out there. Some of them are pretty harsh. You got to be really careful about water erosion and where you're spraying, because those products are usually soil active, which imazapyr is a soil active, versus glyphosate is a foliar active. Once glyphosate hits the ground, it's basically done, and it's got to be absorbed by active growing blades or foliage. Good question.
Great, thanks. And what I'll do when I post this webinar online, I'll include a few links, including kind of those side-by-side comparisons that Ed mentioned, and also make sure I've got a document up there that talks about management. So another question coming up: any ideas, or maybe have you encountered this situation, Ed, where Cogongrass is growing along a fence line and the private owners won't treat on the other side?
Yes, I have seen that. Unfortunately, I did chase down a pretty large infestation in Milton on the corner of 87 and 90 recently. I was able to get landowner access almost all the way to the very back side of the particular grass spot, the infestation. And I hit a brick wall when the final little bit of it, which was a super small amount, was on another landowner. Legally, you can't spray herbicide on property that you don't have permission on, and that's a huge thing. And that's part of what I'm doing, is trying to get across that fence and get that permission and carry it on, because if you don't get the entire infestation, it will come back, and sometimes it can come back with aggression. But as far as treating on the other side of the fence that you don't have permission on, there's nothing I can tell you to do on that. You're legally, by the label, you can't spray on somebody else's land. You got to have permission.
Right. Any other questions? This has been a great discussion. Let's see, I'll go back. You can always reach out to Ed. I know you guys are working as well on a workshop sometime potentially this fall. So we're working with Six Rivers on that. So we'll share that information as well as that project moves forward.
Yeah, we've actually got two that we're working on. We're working on one here on the Florida side that's most likely to happen at the beginning of November, and we have one, yes, and then we have one that is really close to being completed and ready for broadcast that'll happen towards the end of September. And if anybody wants further information on that, get with me or whoever, and we can get you the information.
Great, thank you so much. Well, thank you again for this wonderful presentation. It's always great to see these collaborative projects moving forward and making progress, and great to share them with everyone else too, so they can kind of see what's going on and what models are out there for partnership. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all for attending.
Yeah, so I just have a few quick updates for you guys. I wanted to just make a quick note on this plant, Threeleaf K-Ratia. So we featured this last week on our social media on the Florida Invasive Species Partnership, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. FISP has talked about this one a little bit, so some of you guys may have heard of it. But what's new here is that the UF IFAS assessment used their predictive tool and just released their assessment of it. And so it did come out as a high invasion risk. So when it was identified in Lee County, it was already a concern because it's closely related to another invasive species in the same genus. And so now that we have this supplemental information to say, yes, this really is something we want to kind of get a hold on early. So currently only verified in Lee County, but we just wanted to put it out there, something to kind of keep your eye on, especially if you're in that part of the state. Just one of those early detection rapid response species that we may be able to hit early. And so I wanted to share that with you. And this graphic, again, can be found on our social media, and I'm happy to share any of those graphics we put out on social media with you guys. If you need them, like the direct file, just let me know. So just wanted to put a note on that species. Also, I have been hearing from various CISMA members that there's been challenges this year with getting enough CEUs. You know, obviously with COVID, a lot of trainings were canceled, and from the extension side, I can say I've heard from agents that, you know, the process has been difficult, and I know that FDACS has been struggling with that as well, as how to effectively provide these CEUs with such a dramatic change in the training landscape. So I wanted to let folks know that one good opportunity is coming up, and that's the Aquatic Weed Control Short Course. And the way they're going to do it this year is, you know, usually they have it in South Florida. It's a huge event. But because of the COVID situation, they're going to deliver it virtually to remote sites. So you'll still go in person to a local area for a training that follows all the COVID guidelines. So a lot of these are going to be at your county extension offices. If you're interested in hosting a remote site, you can reach out to Lynn Geddes and double check that your extension may already be doing that. So I'm actually going to put some links up in the chat box here. Give me just a moment to copy those. Let's see. And I'm going to put the link to the IFAS assessment conference so you can find all the information you need. Also, above those links, I've got the IFAS assessment for that three-leaf acacia we just mentioned, as well as a plant profile that FNA put out on that species. And then the third link here is for all the conference information. So check that out. That's a great opportunity to get some of those CEUs you may be needing. I did get a question about some confusion with the dates. So October 27th is an optional pre-workshop. And then the rest of the workshop is the 28th through 30th. So the 27th you register for separately. But again, visit the website to make sure you get all those details. Ed just mentioned that their workshop is going to provide some CEUs as well. And as I said, we'll get the information out for you about that. If folks have opportunities they see for CEUs, feel free to share those on the CISMA listserv, or if you feel more comfortable sending them to me and I can share them. We want to kind of try to help get the word out on some of these programs that will help you guys get all those credits you need. With that, just want to share a reminder of finishing out the year for our CISMA calls next month in September. We're going to be hearing from James Leary, who is going to share some updates on research of mechanical harvesting of aquatic invasive plants. These are some efforts that came out of the aquatic weed control pause and the discussions that were had in the past few years. And then in October, we're going to hear about this novel parasite that has been introduced by pythons and is now impacting native states beyond the range of the python. So this is some really interesting research that has been coming out of the Croc Docs group down in South Florida. Lastly, just a reminder that all these calls, our past calls, are always available on our website. And the last link I shared in the chat box there goes to our CISMA calls page, which will give you the schedule, the participation information, as well as a link to all the past calls. It does take almost a week to get them up. So like, for example, today's call should be up by mid to end of next week, early the following week at the latest. And like I said, I will post some relevant Cogongrass material links under the link to the webinar for you guys as well. So definitely an ID and some management information. With that, hopefully you're following us on all the social media. As I mentioned, if you see any graphics or any information you would want in another format, let me know. Also, please let me know if you have anything you need shared or you'd like us to amplify through those networks. In October, we'll do an overview of kind of how it's been going with this new effort that we've initiated and kind of share the growth that we've had through our social media from that. So with that, if anyone else has anything else they'd like to share, feel free to type it in the chat box or speak out, but that's all I have. So thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon, and look forward to chatting with you again next month.